Update to our breaking news from LAX, where one person has been killed in a construction accident. This is a live look at the airport. You can see several emergency vehicles have responded. In a tweet, LAX says this was an equipment collapse near the Theme building. We will continue to follow this story and bring you the latest information as it comes into our newsroom.
This is a very tragic situation, Sam. It looks like this occurred at the LAX airport in Los Angeles, California on May 10th, 2020. Unfortunately, a man by the name of Juan Bajaras, age 39, passed away. Our condolences go out to his family, to his friends, and his loved ones. And I think he's also part of some sort of union, construction worker union, and they were unfortunately just going through a big loss. And I think that whenever someone is killed, it's an extremely big tragedy. And like for me, my heart breaks for the family, and it's terrible. But let's talk about the legal liability, or what can be done from a legal standpoint, Sam. What's the first thing that goes through your head when you see this type of incident?
Like you said, my condolences go out to the family. It's always unfortunate when you hear about someone, losing their life or being seriously injured. And unfortunately, working in personal injury, that's what we deal with is, people losing their lives and being seriously injured. So the first thing I would do, once the family's kind of collected themselves, this has happened very recently, is they need to talk to a lawyer, because I think that they are going to be entitled to some significant compensation for this incident. Now, I know Cal OSHA is still working on their investigation. It's probably going to take a little bit of time until they determine what the actual cause was. Initial reports are that some rebar collapsed. And we're working on a similar case down here in San Diego where scaffolding collapsed and it caused one of our clients to fall 40 feet and become seriously injured. So we have, our firm does work on a lot of these construction cases, and it's important that you hire the right law firm in order to get in there to start an investigation soon. And that, involves hiring the right experts to go in. Sometimes Cal OSHA misses things. Cal OSHA does try to do an objective job, and most of the time their reports are very thorough. But what Cal OSHA is looking for, and this might be a little bit too much detail, but what Cal OSHA is looking for essentially is whether or not an employer did something that was unsafe for their own employees. So Cal OSHA is only involved with employer-employee safety. What happens in these large construction sites, like what was involved here at LAX, is you will have multiple subcontractors all doing their own part, trying to erect a structure. So you'll have a scaffolding company that's erecting scaffolding. You'll have a separate company that's operating cranes. You'll have a separate company that does the cement work. So what Cal OSHA is only concerned about is whether or not, let's say, a scaffolding company did things properly vis-a-vis their own employees. They don't actually investigate whether or not that scaffolding company did something that was dangerous for the stucco company employees when they're going up on the scaffolding, for instance. Or if the people operating a crane on a construction site, Cal OSHA will look at whether or not the employer took care of their own employees, not whether or not they were doing things that endangered the lives of other subcontractors. So it's important to understand that interplay. A lot of times lawyers will get the Cal OSHA report and there'll be no findings of wrongdoing, and they'll think that that's the end, that there's nothing else you can do with it, when really you need to get your own expert to review this and go in and say, did this subcontractor do something that increased the risk of the person who ended up being injured? And if they did, then you likely have a case against that subcontractor.
There's a lot of things that go into these cases, and I think that that's the difference between a seasoned lawyer like you, Sam, and your average lawyer that will probably flip through a report, an official report by Cal OSHA, and that's the end of the case. But these things are a lot more complicated than that. I think that something like that, or your expertise in this area, would probably be an asset to anyone looking for an attorney in this particular incident, a construction type case. Now, Sam, a lot of people sometimes criticize lawyers for trying to sue someone else within the construction area, and you're just looking for money. But do you think there's actually some positive coming from some sort of lawsuit, like the one a family member would bring if they were unfortunately the victim of this horrendous type of accident?
It's easy to criticize personal injury lawyers, and a lot of people do it because we try to put a price on injuries or put a price on life and say, well, this person died, so that's $5 million. Or you lost a leg, that's $1.5 million, or whatever number we would come up with. But the reality is there is no other thing that we can do to compensate the victims of other people's negligence. We're not going to have you go push the responsible party off the scaffolding because they didn't erect it properly. We're not going to allow you to go punch the cop who punched you. So all you get is you get money. And it's unfortunate, and people think that it's kind of low of personal injury lawyers to do that, but that's the system that we have. What we do accomplish when we bring these types of lawsuits is we force companies to enact safety protocols that will protect the next person. So if a scaffolding company knows that they're going to get hit with a multi-million-dollar judgment because they did something that was unsafe, they cut corners that caused someone to lose their life or caused someone to become severely injured, they're not going to do that next time because it's going to cost them too much money. Or their insurance carrier is not going to insure them anymore, so they're not going to be able to continue on in business. And what we're trying to accomplish is to protect the next person. We don't want this to happen again. And if a scaffolding company, for instance, knows that there's not going to be any consequence, then they're going to try to cut costs, because the way these construction bids go is they say, pay us $100,000 to erect the scaffolding around a building, and they get $100,000. The higher their expenses are, the less of that is going to be profit for the scaffolding company. So they have every incentive to cut their costs, to cut corners, hire fewer people, use cheaper metals, or use cheaper bindings to bind stuff together, because then they have more profit. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make them look at that and say, look, we have to take care of people's safety. We have to value life over our bottom line. Otherwise, we're going to have to pay for it. It's going to end up costing us more in the long run.
Sam, I think it's because of lawyers like you that we have safety measures in this country, why we have seatbelt laws, and why we have seatbelts in cars, and why we don't have defective products and defective vehicles that could injure or kill people. What I could tell you is, if there was a wrong here, this should never, ever, ever happen again to another person. And this is the primary reason why litigation or this type of lawsuit should go forth.
Absolutely. And anybody watching this, if you've been injured, or if you have a family member that was injured in a construction accident, give us a call. We can talk about it. There's no charge, free consultation. We just want to help people out and help families. And sometimes there's not going to be anything we're going to be able to do, and that's unfortunate, but we'll be honest with you. And if there's something we can do, then we'll point you in the right direction.
Absolutely. So anyone watching this, call Samuel. He's an excellent lawyer, and I highly recommend him.
Thanks, Nar.
Thanks, Sam.